I went to school, back in Rutherford, New Jersey, they taught me that the assassin of Abraham Lincoln, John Wilkes Booth, was killed in a barn by United States soldiers. And no doubt that's true. But wait a minute. On the 13th of January in 1903, in the town of Enid, Oklahoma, a man known as David E. George lies in a dingy hotel room, grievously injured from a desperate attempt to take his own life. Why? Let him tell us.
I killed the best man that ever lived.
You killed a man?
I killed Abraham Lincoln. Oh, don't doubt it. It's true. I know what you're thinking. That Booth was killed in Garrett's barn that night. Well, he wasn't. I am Booth.
Well, how did you escape?
Why,
He's in a coma.
He must have been out of his head.
No, he wasn't. He knew what he was saying.
But Booth was well known. He'd been on the stage for years.
David used to be an actor in his younger days. He told me so. He often recited Shakespeare, whole passages at a time.
And he did it just like a professional.
A good Shakespearean actor turned house painter.
But he's never painted a house since he came here.
He didn't have to. David always received a regular income.
From where?
He never told me that.
I wonder if Booth did have a chance to escape.
Now, history says that back in 1865, the city of Washington saw torchlight parades, colorful processions, and literally dancing in the streets, celebrating the surrender of General Robert E. Lee at Appomattox, marking the virtual end of the Civil War. Openly, the city was showing its joy at the Northern victory, its worship of the president who had brought the divided Union again into one. But there was still a minority who bitterly resented the loss of the Southern cause, who hated Lincoln with a fiery hatred, who hoped for his downfall. The Jubilee culminated in a gala theatrical performance of Our American Cousin at Ford's Theater. The guest of honor, Abraham Lincoln.
Out of my way. Why'd you let him get away from me?
Oh, what do you mean? That was John Wilkes Booth, the actor.
Booth?
Yes,
Booth shot him. You hang for this. Booth
can't get away with
I
this.
don't know where he was.
12 days after the assassination, according to my history book, John Wilkes Booth was trapped in Garrett's barn near Bowling Green, Virginia. Brought to bay, the man in the barn refused to surrender. The building on fire, surrounded by troops, facing the alternative of being taken prisoner or burning to an agonizing death, he knew full well any fight for his life could only be a losing one. And now comes a doubtful question of history. For suddenly a single shot was heard above the roaring of the flames. Was the man in the barn impulsively killed by an overexcited trooper, or did he commit suicide? At any rate, the chase of the limping fugitive was over. When removed, the body of the man in the barn was carefully and meticulously covered. Strangely, the city of Washington was alive with rumors that the body was not the body of John Wilkes Booth. Authorities feared public demonstrations, ordered the corpse taken to the gunboat Montauk, anchored in the Potomac River, where General Barnes questioned a physician who had once attended Booth.
Dr. May, will you examine the body?
There's no resemblance in that corpse to John Wilkes Booth.
Are you sure, Doctor?
Positive. You can never believe it to be the same man.
Didn't you perform an operation on Booth's neck?
Yes, removed a tumor.
Will you look at the scar on the neck?
That's the scar. The features might be his, but never in a human being has a greater change taken place.
Seven other witnesses identified the body as that of Booth. Finally, the initials J.W.B. were found tattooed on one hand. But why all this importance attached to identifying Booth? He was no ordinary actor. He was the Clark Gable of his day, and as well known. And why, on the night of the assassination, did the telegraph lines out of Washington go mysteriously dead for several hours? And why, although the roads running out of the city were immediately closed by armed guards, was one road left eloquently and conspicuously open, the Port Tobacco Road, by some strange coincidence, the very road down which the fugitive fled.
Who are you?
My name is John Wilkes Booth.
Where are you going?
Home. I live in Charles.
All right, go ahead.
Thank you.
And pausing only to acquire a clean-shaven face as a feeble disguise, John Wilkes Booth rode off again into the night and into the pages of your history book. The reward for Booth's capture was $100,000, the largest amount ever offered. Yet only 3 hours after he crossed the Anacostia Bridge, the guarding sentry was relieved. But the officer in charge of the guard relief did not question the sentry, nor did the sentry volunteer that John Wilkes Booth had ridden madly down the road, which was notorious as the underground route used by Southern spies throughout the Civil War. An outraged nation was frantically searching for the murderer of its president, yet John Wilkes Booth was free and, which is even more significant, remained a free man for 12 more days. In fact, days passed before the Port Tobacco Road was really searched at all. Then Provost Marshal O'Beirne and his troops came upon definite evidence of Booth. 2 men who admitted having passed and identified Booth far down the road. But just when O'Beirne was about to pick up the fugitive's trail, he received a telegram post-haste from his superiors in Washington, a message containing the astounding instructions for O'Beirne to call off the manhunt into Virginia and to remain on the Maryland side of the Potomac. And all the while, Booth was headed south on the highway of escape. 3 days later, the man in the barn was dead. O'Beirne, who had not yet received the news and who was still searching for the assassin, learned that a man using a crutch had just been seen to enter a swamp about 40 miles from Garrett's farm. His searching men came upon crutch marks and footprints, freshly made, but they never found the man who made those crutch marks. Was he David E. George? David E. George certainly bears a remarkable resemblance to Booth. He has the same odd facial characteristics, the same mismated eyebrows, the same satanic-type ears, and a scar on his neck, too. Men have been hanged on less positive identification than this. And you will remember that after shooting Lincoln, Booth had leaped from the theater box to the stage, and in landing broke his left leg above the ankle. Well, George's left leg showed such a fracture and in the same place. Strange indeed. The same scar on the neck, the same blemish on the left ankle. And here's the MGM historian's exclusive contribution to the question, a fact that has never before been published. According to Joseph Hazelton, former program boy at Ford's Theater, who knew Booth well, he had been present one rehearsal day when Booth accidentally caught his hand in the mechanism of the theater curtain, with the result that the famous actor's right hand was irreparably damaged. Well, George has a maimed right hand, too. But if David E. George was John Wilkes Booth, what about the tattoo marks? For no tattoo marks were found on George. But tattoo marks can be removed. Were they removed, or were they never there? David E. George said he was John Wilkes Booth. History says no. Who was the man in the barn?